Hi everybody, it's the Baum Interviews again on 87.8 FM, j-air.com.au. Thursday morning, 9 o'clock, the Baum Interviews repeated on Sunday at 5 p.m. So much news. Here we are between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and we have the delightful news, please God, that Malka Leifer will be coming back, will be extradited to Melbourne. We absolutely admire the three sisters, Dacia Ehrlich and her two sisters, Michelle Orbach and Ellie Sapper, for their continued battle, struggle, tenacity, resilience, courage over these years. 6 years of campaigning and 11 years from the time of 74 counts of sexual abuse by the principal of the Adas Girls' School here in Melbourne. So I brought you straight from the ABC this morning, Eric Torchek from Jerusalem, and a little bit about our own situation here in Melbourne. What does it mean with these low cases, etc., etc.? When can we have the restrictions, especially in Melbourne? 5 million people brought to stage 3 or whatever by an epidemiologist. So that is it for this week. Our guests this week are Ian Grimblatt and Kathy Grimblatt, who will tell you the stories of the people whose stories they have documented and written and proofread and edited, something which began more than a decade ago. Many of you are listening today will know of some of those stories which have been published. That's Ian and Kathy Grimblatt, our guests in the Baum Interviews today, we call it Yom Kippur edition, as we had the Rosh Hashanah edition last week. All podcasts you can get, just go Hanna, Hanna Baum radio, and you'll get the 50-something podcasts, starting with the most recent. So that's it for this week, with the music of Tchaikovsky, Concerto No. 1, and Utatana Tokef from the Rosh Hashanah Davening. This is just one day before Rosh Hashanah.
Oh, that's perfect.
Isn't it? Just one day before Rosh Hashanah, because of course this is recorded. I'm in my garden here with Kathy Grimblatt, who I know from Beth Rivka many years ago, and Ian Grimblatt, her husband, who I've never actually met before, but who my husband knew from Brighton Shul. Isn't that right, Ian?
That's right, yes.
Wow, how long ago was that?
Well, I grew up in Brighton Shul, and we only left Brighton Shul after we were married, when we moved to Kew, when we became members of Kew Shul. So
how long ago?
That was, I'm trying to work it out, that was...
Bar mitzvah?
73 we left.
Oh, wow, yes. Okay,
but then we went back after we came back from Sydney.
So you knew Jeffrey from 73?
From before.
From
73.
before, because he had his bar mitzvah there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, from before. Yes. So it's a very long time.
It's a very long time.
Yeah.
And have you met in between?
Only once or twice.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you started off in Brighton with the family Baum, and you graduated to another shul. Which was the other shul?
Well, after we married, we moved to Kew.
You moved
we
to Kew.
Joined the Kew Shul.
You joined the Q in Kew. Yeah.
Yes.
So how did you meet Kathy?
We were introduced by a mutual friend.
Oh, that's lovely.
I grew up in Sydney. She was a Sydney girl, but they were family friends. So that's how we met.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
How old were you, Kathy, when you got married?
22, going
Lovely.
on 23.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. What about you, Ian?
I was 24 still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Just about to turn 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you came down from Sydney to live in Melbourne.
Yeah, well, we had a stint in Sydney, but you can't take the Melbourne out of a boy.
No, you can't.
So
And
eventually
what about
we
the
came
Sydney
back.
out of a girl? Can you?
You know, a wife goes where.
In those days.
That's right. But I do love it here. So
You
I have
love
no
it here.
regrets.
Okay, we won't talk about the present time.
No.
Because it's a little bit different. But it's a good place, yeah?
It is.
And you've got your family here,
No,
your children.
our children are here.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. My sister and family are in Sydney, so that's a
Yeah,
bit of a
but
wrench,
your
we
children
said
are here.
Yes.
And they're
We're
married with their
lucky.
children? Or?
One with
that's lovely.
children, one was married. Yes. Yeah.
Beautiful. Very
Yeah.
nice. Okay, so I'm jealous because my children are here.
Are away.
One is in New York and one is in Jerusalem.
I remember your
And of
family.
course, this is, for me, the anxiety is, when am I going to see my kids?
Exactly.
I mean, it probably will be 2 years since I'll be seeing my son in New
It's
York.
a huge thing.
And we don't know. One of the borders, never mind the borders to get out of this place.
Between.
But between them. It is
Yeah.
really. Anyway, we'll leave that for another time. So, Ian, now I've got an incredible display of the books that you have actually written, plus, how do you call it? Authored, not authored, but...
Well, in the case of this one,
Yeah, so
It
this
is-
one, let's tell us...
it's
the
her
new-
story.
Okay,
And
remember, this is not television, this is
Right.
radio.
Well,
So we have to tell
this
everybody.
is
what
A
it
Life Reclaimed,
Right.
A Child Among the Partisans by
Right.
Luba Olensky.
Right.
Now, Luba has a very good recall,
Mm-hmm.
and she spoke to me. So we had weekly meetings,
Yeah, I remember her.
and I would transcribe what she said, and she would often, on a point that she was not sure of, she would ring. She had people, people that she'd been in the forest with who lived in Sweden. She would ring them and check the facts, and we'd correct it. And so it was my writing, but it was her story.
It was her story.
But with this one, the through coloured glass, reflections on my changing world by Eva Urbach. Eva had done a lot of writing herself, but they were episodes. She wanted my help to combine it into a life story, which I did. So there was some talking to her and taking notes, and some getting her to write a bit, and in some
Beautiful,
places
beautiful.
making connections and then asking, is that connection? Is that right? Is that
Is it all books, or did you do any audio, visual, or anything with them?
I haven't done audio visual with people, but for example, some people didn't want to,
A book.
Didn't want a book. This
Yeah.
one, and a very interesting one. He's no longer alive, but he was a cousin,
Polonsky.
and he came to me and said, "I need you to write my life story."
Oh.
But he said the
Was
problem
that at the
is,
beginning, Ian?
No,
Was
no.
that when you started?
no, this was I'd already established myself,
Okay.
and he said, "My problem is I've got nothing to say."
You see.
So I said, "Well, why do you want to write it down?" And he said, "My Mahatonim are from Shanghai, and they've written their story."
Oh, of course.
So, but
So he's not going to be outdone, those Shanghai people.
But it turned out he really had a story.
He had a story. Isn't that the thing? Because
People don't realise.
Every person has more than a story.
That's right.
Especially if they've been through the Holocaust.
Well, this man hadn't been through the Holocaust. He'd grown up in Melbourne,
Yeah.
and he
That's probably why he thought,
That's right.
Because everybody else had had these horrific lives. And compared to them, they haven't got much of a story.
but he was able to cast a lot of light
Yes.
on commercial practices,
Really?
which are no longer current. I mean, nowadays we take it for granted that everyone has a credit card, but there used to be such a thing as
commercial
lay-by, and there was.
Oh,
and,
lay-by. I remember lay-by.
And he cut his teeth as a salesman
with
in
it.
time payment.
I remember that.
They-
They used to come door to door.
Door to door.
And the catalogues.
And that's right. and people were paying off at $1 a week.
Yeah, actually, it was rather cute. 'Cause I think people like the guy. It's a bit of company,
it
You give
was.
them the shilling a
That's
week.
right.
It was.
And
It was in fact.
It was
you
lovely.
established a relationship.
Yeah, you did.
Yes.
But I
I
think if you
remember
don't mind
that.
my saying, a lot of that
Course,
comes
Kathy.
up because I think one of Ian's strengths is that he sets things into a historical, social context. So, the person might tell their story,
Yeah.
but then it takes somebody to ask
Oh,
the
the
questions and tease it
questions.
out.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So, this is why I wanted to meet you, Ian, because I've been doing this for a long, long time. I started off when I came to Australia in 1984, and then I went to Radio National, Religion, and that was it, the stories. But now I'm doing more of it, and it's all audio. So for the first time, I'm hoping that this programme that we're having the day before Rosh Hashanah will be live on Facebook. So just for you to know, better not defame or do anything like and maybe on YouTube, somebody's organised a YouTube channel. I'm not really that kind of thing, but yeah. So you see, so this is audio, and this can be in the same way. You know, you can have audio books. And
yes, I've not been asked to do an audio book. I imagine the process would be similar, although I think we'd have to get the script right and then record it.
Yeah. So let's bring Kathy in. So how did this start? You're married at the age of 22, 23?
Yeah.
And you're a teacher, an English teacher. Yeah.
I am. And I recognised in Ian straight away. I mean, I could see he was never satisfied or passionate, that's for sure, about his working life.
And what did he do? What was his job?
He was working as a quantity surveyor. Yes. But, I mean, everything in our conversation...
It was all about literature.
And he could write, you know, without any problem at all.
So that was the bond between the two of you, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And my introduction to people's stories was, in fact, I volunteered to be an interviewer for the Shoah Foundation.
Yeah. I understand. That's where you started, yeah.
No, that was here in Melbourne.
Oh, the Shoah Foundation.
Yes. And
you had to do video testimonies, and it was structured, very highly structured.
It was structured, but it was very interesting to hear what life was like for these people before, and about the reconstruction. It's not, well, certainly not for me. It wasn't about cataloguing horrors. It was about lives.
Yeah, exactly. You know, there was you must know this one, the tattooist of. Yeah, so I know the son, he's a friend of ours, and what a story that was, really. But in the middle of all this horror, you have this love story between these two. I mean, yeah, incredible.
Well, there's such a range of stories. Of
so let's have a look now. So you were a teacher at Beth Rivka for about 30 years? Or?
Oh, not quite.
Well, no, almost. Yeah.
I think it was
19 years. Oh, sorry, okay. And then after that, you continued? Or
then after that, I did a few years at King David.
Oh, King David,
so that I could go on with the literature.
Oh, lovely.
And now I'm at home.
But you're at home, but you're also tutoring, aren't you?
Tutoring.
Yeah, you're tutoring at home.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah.
So are you doing VCE English or?
Absolutely. Yes,
and you charge $150 in this? She's not going to say. I know people who charge $150 a lesson. Okay, right. And so the first book was... there's a book here, Children of the Shadows, edited by Kathy Greenblatt, Voices of the Second Generation. Yeah. That was yours?
That was mine. That actually took flight in my head in the staff room. Bed Rivka. Yeah. Because the two friends were arguing.
Yeah.
One said to the other one, you don't know what it was like to grow up being called a Jewish pig. She came from Poland as a teenager. And the other one said, yeah, well, you don't know what it was like to be a latchkey child because, of course, her parents were out at work. She grew up here. And that just sort of triggered it. And this collection took 4 years to put together because I was still working full-time.
So did you start off with this friend of yours and interview her?
She didn't actually. Neither one of those wrote. Look, there were many, many people who felt they couldn't write, and there are all sorts of reasons. I mean, you could have filled volumes with the people who were interested but felt for various reasons they couldn't write. Very true, and then finally I had to, make choices as to, I wanted a variety and so on of story. It opened up unbelievable unbelievable friendships and conversations. And
so how did you go about it? So let's say the one from school didn't work out. How did you get on to the rest of the people?
Then I spoke to a gentleman who became really my mentor and teacher, Alex Skovron. Do you know him?
Alex?
He's an editor, Skovron.
Of course, yes.
And we had met socially, and he asked me, when we came to Melbourne, he asked me what I'm going to do here, and I said, well, I left my heart at Mariah in Sydney. I'll never
His
teach
son,
again.
I think, Scovey.
That's right.
Oh my gosh.
That's right.
He was the music
That's
teacher.
exactly
He
right.
was Ma
Yeah.
of Yavna.
That
We
was
were
right.
just...
Both their children.
And look at
were
him
music
now,
teachers.
what he's
Yeah.
doing, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
What's his first name?
John.
We call him
Father,
Scarf. No, their son.
Jonathan.
Jonathan.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
What an incredible family.
Yeah.
Mm.
So Alex had said to me, you know, you're going to teach here. I said, no, left my heart at Mariah. I'll never teach again.
Is that what he's doing?
And at the end of that conversation, he gave me his business card.
yeah.
And he said, I think you're a bit confused, but when you decide what to do, give me a ring.
And he was the first.
And I left that card in my handbag. Years
Years
later,
and
after
years.
been teaching.
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
on.
yeah.
And I
That's a lovely
took his
story.
advice and started to ask people, and people then led me to
other people.
Yeah.
But was he like you did
He
get his
wrote-
story?
He wrote beautifully, yes.
Yes.
Yes, he was very generous.
Kathy's downplaying her role.
Oh, she would.
didn't simply invite.
I know her.
She didn't simply invite people. One of our friends, for example, wrote 2 sentences, just covering 2 incidents that he remembered from his
2
growing up.
sentences?
2 sentences, and she worked with him
Wow.
and got a very a story where he really revealed a great deal of himself.
One thing.
So there was
very-
enormous trust, and Kathy was able to build that.
It was a fabulous.
Did you do that
experience.
audio or did you do it?
No.
You
no,
did writing.
Just working in writing. But one thing that I must say here, Alex introduced me to a publisher, and they said to me, you know, you will never get men to write their story
You
because they
did.
won't reveal. They were so wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Men were so
Oh, lovely.
really cooperative and wanted to say
Because you were
something.
interested in
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
So how do you think about that, Ian? You know, the men. Did you find with yours that the men?
Well, in fact, I've written only for predominantly women.
Ah.
But for example, this man, David Kay, also no longer alive.
Ah.
Now this was an interview process, and it's interesting. When his name was proposed to me, I just knew him by, I just knew who he was, and he had a rather rough exterior, and I thought, I don't know if I'll get onto a wavelength with him. It turned out he was so anxious to tell his story, and he was a real pussycat, actually. And he told me things where he'd often stop and he'd say, do you know, I've never told my wife this. So it was...
So it's a therapy, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, actually, one of
Yes.
the clients that Ian's working with now came to our home before all of this and said, this is actually much better than going to the
Much
psychiatrist.
better. Because the trust, and you can just carry on.
And
Beautiful.
it is about trust. And sometimes, even when they initially trust you, they'll recoil and say, look, I can't go ahead with it. And that's happened to me twice. And all you can do at that point is assure people that whatever they've told you is absolutely confidential.
So we're going to have a little break now, because we're then going to go to more of these wonderful books. And also, because it's Rosh Hashanah tomorrow, your choice of music was?
Ki Kashimcha, which is from the climax of the Rosh Hashanah service.
Right, absolutely.
And a beautiful prayer talking about the frailty of man.
And what is that prayer called?
Ki Kashimcha.
From U Natana Tokef.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yes, that is really incredible. I think we're going to miss that, aren't we?
Yes, I think we're going.
I think we're going to miss a lot. But those tunes from Rosh Hashanah.
And also I think people don't realise how important the communal experience is. And they
don't realise.
They take it for granted. We talk through it. We're familiar with it. We do all sorts of things, but we miss it when it's not there. And it's interesting to hear the politicians talking about we want people to be able to have Christmas. But in fact,
Christmas! Rosh Hashanah in a week!
that's right.
You know?
And we've already had Pesach without community
Pesach without
service.
Christmas. Do you know, most of these people don't particularly want Christmas. There are so many people who would much prefer if there wasn't a Christmas, because at Christmas they're alone and they're isolated. They commit suicide. You know, some people, you know, it's a sad time for a lot of people, you know, because of all the expectations. So let's forget Christmas now. So we're going to listen to this. Thank you so much. Okay.
ובוא תנסה מלכותך ויקון בחסד כיסאך ותשב עליו באמת ותשב עליו באמת אמת כי אתה הוא דיין ומוכיח ויודע וכותב וחותם וסופר ומונה ותזכור כל הנשכחות ותפתח ספר הזיכרונות ומאליו יקרב וחותם יד כל אדם בו ובשופר גדול ייתקע וכל דממה דקה יישמע ומלאכים יחפזון וחיל ורעדה יוחזון ומלאכים יחפזון וחיל ורעדה ובשופר גדול ייתקע וכל דממה דקה יישמע ומלאכים יחפזו וחיל ורעדה יוחזו ומלאכים יחפזו וחילו רעדה יוחזו ויאמרו הנה יום הדין לפקוד על צמרום בדין כי לא יזכו בעיניך בדין וכל באי עולם יעברו לפניך כבני מרון כבקרת רואה עדרו מעביר צונו תחת שבטו וכל באי עולם יעברו לפניך כבני מרון כבקרת רואה עדרו מעביר צונו תחת שבטו כן תעביר ותספור ותמנה ותפקוד נפש כל חי ותחתוך קצבה לכל בריאה ותכתוב את גזר דינם ובשופר גדול ייתקע וכל דממה דקה יישמע ומלאכים יחפזו וחיל ורעדה יוחזו וחיל ורעדה יוחזו ובשופר גדול ייתקע וכל דממה דקה יישמע ומלאכים יחפזו וחיל ורעדה יוחזו בראש השנה ייכתב ביום צום כיפור יחתמו. כמה יעברון וכמה יברון, מי יחיה ומי ימות, מי בקיצו ומי לא בקיצו, מי במים ומי באש, מי בחרב ומי בחיה, מי ברש ומי במגפה, מי ינוח ומי ינוח, מי שקט ומי יתערב, מי ישלם ומי יתייסר, מי ישלם ומי יתייסר, מי ירום ומי ישפר, מי יאשר ומי יעני. ותשובה ותפילה וצדקה מעבירין את רוע הגזרה.
So that was from the Rosh Hashanah liturgy. That was U Natana Tokef. And since we're on Rosh Hashanah, how are you two thinking about Rosh Hashanah this year?
Oh, baking and cooking, doing all the things that we normally do.
The compote is made, the soup is made.
Oh, wow. Don't tell me, I've done nothing, I've done nothing.
Because I distribute it to the kids.
Oh, you do,
and
yes.
to
Well, it's
the-
only the two of us, you
I
see.
just feel I'm not going to give up all those rituals.
No, you're not going to give up
We have
anything.
Yom Tov,
We
that's
will
it.
have everything. And there's a lot that the community are doing, aren't they?
Absolutely.
And look, we're religious, okay. But there's a rabbi, a Sephardi rabbi in Israel, who said, if you are isolated, alone, there is a heter you can have for Zoom.
Well,
And he made it. So at least some people,
well, for mental
why
health,
not?
You know, rather than for people to be struggling.
Exactly.
and the
What a
stress
terrible
rubbing
thing to be
onto-
on your own. You've gone
Exactly.
through the Holocaust and you're on your own and you're thinking about your family and it must be
Exactly.
devastating.
Yeah.
Absolutely devastating. Anyway, so that's it. So let's go back to the books. Now, you were talking about Ephraim,
Yes.
Helensky memoir, and you said to us how interesting that he actually didn't think he had anything to say.
No. What was particularly interesting, as he made his career in sales, and Melbourne was a big city, but it wasn't that big.
No.
So he was a fashion agent, and when he dealt with Myers, he dealt with Bailey Meyer. So
He dealt with what?
Bailey Meyer,
Oh,
the son of the founder.
Yes.
You know, so he was.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So it was.
Such a connection.
Yes, and it's a picture of a time past, and we live in a much bigger society, much busier society now.
And a few of them have gone to Israel now, haven't they?
Yeah.
The guy from Westfield has
Yes,
gone to
Larry,
Israel now,
yes.
Larry.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think when people have their book, whether it's a story just for the family or a book that is published for a wider audience, they give their family the chance to know them
In a
as-
way they
as-
haven't known before.
Yes, and to understand,
Yeah.
in a sense, what makes their parents or grandparents who they are. And I think, if you don't mind me saying now, that at the moment the conversation is coming back to a lot of that during this time.
Yes,
People have
yeah.
been talking about. I'm
Oh,
going through my
really? And you've been
photos.
called by quite a few
I'm
people
going
now.
through my photos.
Wow.
I'm going through my
about it.
photos too.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm doing mine. You know, I've been doing mine for years. Honestly, even when I called it from Baghdad, it's called From Baghdad to Balaclava. Hasn't been published yet. And I've done a few talks in
Yeah.
South Caulfield and St Kilda and Caulfield and whatever. And
People
I
are
love doing
looking
the
back.
talk, you know.
Yeah.
And then I speak a bit of Arabic, so people, you know. So I said, I started off actually in the comedy festival, the Jewish comedy festival.
Yeah.
It's only happened once. And Rachel Berger was there, and I did this 10 minutes. The first time I ever did it. From Baghdad to Balaclava. So I started off. It was in the Yiddishist place, you know, next to the
At the Holocaust Center.
Holocaust Centre, but the other
Kadima.
place.
Kadima.
Kadima. So I said, does anybody know Arabic here? Oh, you only speak Yiddish. Because it's putting the glove on the other hand.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I was always asked,
You
what,
speak
you
Yiddish?
don't speak Yiddish? Are you Jewish?
That's right.
And I said they spoke Arabic at home. Arabic? And then I've tried to bring in that we were living for 2,500 years, And in that talk, I bring it in. And so I'm writing and I'm doing, but I still have to do it. So I have to come to you. So you're going to be I have to come to you, Ian. You're going to have to get me going. So anybody out there, I think it's a wonderful thing. And I think you do feel the sense of achievement, don't you?
Definitely. And I have to say I enjoy the engagement with their lives. And I enjoy placing that story in history. And, I mean, even in my own lifetime, I can see how dramatically life has changed. And I think for the children who are now the rising generation, life in Europe is life in pre-war Europe is unimaginable.
It is.
Yeah.
And of course now with anti-Semitism everywhere and everything as well, our Holocaust survivors who are still here are being re-traumatised because and the second generation that you've written about, because they see things that are happening, even here.
Well, they're certainly very upset.
They are upset, aren't they?
Who are still with us are certainly upset to think that even in their own lifetime it's rearing its head. But I think we have to just work very hard at giving our children confidence.
Yes.
It's not simply confidence. They have to have pride. If they have
pride, and this gives them the pride. Yeah,
yes.
You're right. Yeah.
Yes, I think that's the thing. I mean, when you think that generations that really suffered in Europe, but every morning when they said their prayers, they said, how lucky are we? How fortunate are we? How beautiful our heritage. So, and we have to be able to transmit that to our children.
So it's gratitude, isn't it? Really?
It's not just gratitude, but pride.
The pride. It's different,
and valuing the heritage.
That is so true, isn't it, Kathy? So let's have a look at some of these other books. So you started off with the book. What was the first one you did?
This one. This is about Kathy's family, the Weinberger family from Munkach.
Oh, Munkach. Jeffrey and I were married in 89, and about a month or so later, I won a Goyrel to go to New York. The only time it's ever been happened. It was amazing. 2 days before the wedding. So we went off to New York, Israel, London, because my parents were not able to come to the wedding.
Right.
And we stayed in Borough Park, in the Borough Park Hotel.
Yeah.
And the Munkacher minion Jeffrey went to every morning.
Oh, yeah.
He's not Hasidic at all, but he found it very interesting.
Yeah.
And that's your family.
That's my father's family.
So how much of that were you involved with growing up?
Unfortunately, my father, who also he wrote beautifully and was really, I would say, quite an orator.
And he had tremendous knowledge.
But he did not speak about his experiences during the Holocaust. He couldn't speak about it, unfortunately. So it was really, he would tell a couple of little snippets of family life. That was it. So it was putting together, I think I actually called it Out of the Silences. We just tried to put together.
So could you read something from it, Kathy? That means a great deal to you, like...
I think maybe I'll just, even
from the beginning. Yeah, that would be great.
So as time goes by, we become further removed from our past, and so it seems more than ever pertinent that we should try to know who we are. This document is a delicate, fragile piecing together, as much to feel our heritage as to know it. We cannot, after all, know what has been plundered and torn and annihilated. We cannot unearth those memories, people, stories from the pain and silence of those who are not here to speak. We cannot know faces from the photographs either never taken or lost altogether. And just as frustrating are those photographs which we have found of people who probably are family but cannot be identified. I decided on... Should I leave it at that?
No, it's lovely. Keep going.
I decided on the day of my uncle Harry Weinberger's funeral that it is now vital to try to record whatever names we can, so that we and the generations to follow should know what is possible. to know. Perhaps I'll start. Our
Yeah.
story
Yes,
begins in Mukachevo, part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire before the First World War, and then a part of the newly established Republic of Czechoslovakia after that war.
Ah, right, yes.
In 1939, on the eve of the Second World War, it came under Hungarian rule when Hungary seized part of Slovakia and Romania, and so it became again known by its Hungarian name, Munkac. On Purim, 19th of March 1944, German forces occupied Hungary. This was the beginning of the end for the Jews of Mukachevo. They were about to be consumed by the Shoah, which had already destroyed most of European Jewry. At the end of the Second World War, this town and its region was swallowed up by the Ukraine.
So, they belong to so many different countries, haven't they? How would that be? You don't know anything. You don't know. I mean, it's a bit like here. We don't know what's going on.
Well, that's
the
right.
uncertainty of it. Here you've got,
We've
you've
just got a taste of
Austro-Hungarian,
it.
then you've got Czechoslovakia, you've got Hungary.
Children
it
had
must
to
have been.
learn languages
Yes,
year by year.
they did, didn't they?
Yeah.
But for example, Kathy's mum
Thank you, Kathy. That was great.
told us about they didn't live in their hometown, but they always went back to their hometown for Pesach, and that was a rail journey. Well, after the Hungarians had taken that southern part of Slovakia, their hometown was in Hungary, and they had to cross the boundary. The Hungarians,
Like here.
the Hungarians
Wow.
knew why they were travelling. They knew they were going for Pesach, and so they held them at the border and said, "Oh, we have to check something." There was nothing wrong with their papers. And they held them there till eventually Kathy's grandfather realised what was going on, and he said to his family, "Pick up your suitcases and follow me." They walked out of the railway station, they walked into the town, and
then they couldn't find them.
well, they saw a house that had a mezuzah, and he said, "This looks like a likely place." They knocked on the door, and they explained their predicament, and the people said, "Come in."
Wow.
And they stayed.
And that was Erev Pesach.
That was Pesach.
They must have been so out of their minds.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so they
But it was a time of such chaos already.
Was it anti-Semitism then?
Of course it was. They were
They
just
did it deliberately.
They were playing a game with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
All right.
and I think it was a time when community life was different. There were a lot of itinerants. In the shuls, there was a hektish for these itinerants.
What's
The
a
com-
hektish?
A hektish is a refuge. These are people who are itinerants. They couldn't afford to stay in an inn. Some of them might have been lucky and a family would put them up, but generally there was a room in the shul where they could sleep, and the community provided some food for them, and so that they wouldn't be on the street.
So what was the name of this place where they were?
A hektish.
Hektish. That
Yeah.
was the name of the place.
Yeah.
No, the name of the place.
No.
No.
A hektish
Was the refuge.
is a refuge
No.
in a shul.
No, so what was the actual
Then-
town?
They were going from Žilina, which is in Slovakia, back to Košice, which
is
is
in Hungary.
was already in Hungary.
Yes.
So, but children had to learn. The grandparents could speak Hungarian, but not German. They had to learn German at school,
So they could speak to
so they could speak and languages. So it was nothing for people who grew up then to speak 5, 6,
I know.
7
This is the
languages.
incredible
Yeah.
thing, isn't it?
Because that was survival.
That was survival, wasn't it? They had to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's now look. So that's how it began.
That
And
started it.
And now we've got. We're just going very quickly here. We've got. Many of us know Mr. Gurovich's father.
Mr. Gorovich's father, as old Mr. Nachum Zalman Gorovich. I was teaching at Bad Rivka. Mr. Gorovich was our wonderful principal, and he had seen this document that we'd written, and he expressed interest. He said he's ready to write his story.
Really?
So that's how he.
That's how you did.
That was my first. That was my first book, and it took quite a long time until and of course I was working full time. This was done at weekends and at night, but I developed a method. And
what was the method then? Was
basically
it audio first, and then you transcribe?
I didn't take tapes. I wrote notes. I wrote notes.
Shorthand?
No, longhand.
So you tell them, excuse me, slow down.
Sometimes it was.
But listening to the answer enables you to then put the next question.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a bit more immediate.
Yes.
Perhaps.
Yeah, that's great. And then the one after then these. So here there's Eva Orbach.
Yes.
Through coloured glass. And you were saying this was quite an incredible one.
Yes. This lady is still alive. A very intelligent lady. It's from a German family. She was 12 years old when the family left Germany after Kristallnacht. And they came to Australia via London. And just her experiences as a schoolgirl, as an enemy alien, she had to,
I know the enemy alien.
And as an enemy alien, she had to register all of the complications, but there was a lot of goodwill, which she also described.
Yes, they're not all negative.
That's right.
There are positive, even funny moments.
Yeah,
in
and
the
what?
story.
And so we talked about the tough kid one.
Yes.
That.
Well, he had a remarkable childhood in Siberia, and his mother was obviously a woman of great ability to make the best of a situation.
And this was David
Yes,
Kay. Yeah,
David Kay.
Kay. Yeah. And then what about this survival? Marika Weinberger.
Well, Marika was Kathy's
that's
mum.
your mum.
And I wrote the epilogue
Wow.
for this book. This is a selection of Marika's speeches, and she asked
So
me...
what was she?
She was the president of the Holocaust Association
Here.
in
Sydney.
Sydney,
Sydney.
and part of the organising
made a lot of
committee.
And she was
My
very
dad.
high profile.
Oh, yeah.
When the television stations wanted a comment, they went to her.
Oh, wow.
She was very articulate. She was a very strong representative for the survivors.
Yeah.
But,
I just want to read something very quick about this. Oh, look at her. Abiding
So
Princess.
that book was put together by the museum in Sydney.
Oh, the museum.
But Ian was asked, my mum asked him to write a brief history to put that into context.
Okay, I just want to read a little bit. It's on page XEE, which is Roman numerals 12. On the 24th of March, 1946, a cold and overcast day in Kosiki. Is that how you pronounce it?
Košice.
Oh, because it's with the... What do you call that? 2 dots.
Well, it's different in Slovak, so it's not an umlaut. I don't know what
No,
it's called. It's
I don't know. Košiki. Czechoslovakia. 2 people from widely disparate backgrounds were joined in marriage. Alexander Sia Weinberger, blonde, serious, intellectual, spiritual, from an intensely Hasidic background, and Eva Mariana Sierra, brunette, blue-eyed, sporty, daddy's girl, an ambitious student from a traditional, thoroughly bourgeois home. And now...
The bird is upsetting.
Oh, the bird. Oh, it's a magpie, darling. Now, I must say, it's very good that this is not video, it's audio, because at the moment, it's the magpie. Magpie, go, Kathy. Ah! Magpie, it's come on to go. Magpie, go home. Magpie. She's gone. Go. Okay, sorry, that little interlude. We had to chase the magpie away, and now Kathy is she retreated in our back door, through the back door, and she's now coming back, creeping back in case the magpie comes. Because Kathy, these magpies really have caused quite a lot of... There's a notice just here about the magpies.
Swooping magpies.
Swooping magpies. Absolutely, 100%. So it comes in here, and I was feeding it food.
Oh, that's the problem.
It's all my fault. Okay, so that was surviving survival. Now, what else have we got here?
I'd just like to say,
Sure.
for example, Reva Cohen is well known in the Lubavitch community.
Of course.
And she was rather reluctant to do the story.
Yeah.
Her children
I can imagine that. I can really imagine
Her family wanted it. But
Yeah.
I think once... Well, first of all, she got to know me. She got to trust me.
Yeah.
And I think she actually enjoyed the exercise. And I think... but she's... if you know her, you know that she's a particularly dedicated lady.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
devoted. And she wanted to call it Leman Yedu Dorotechem, which is the message that she wanted for her family, that they should know from where they've come.
That's beautiful. Now, Reva's story is from where? Well, where's her family from?
Riva was born in Russia.
Yeah.
Well, she was actually born in Tashkent.
Tashkent, yes.
But her family were Russian and were refugees. And she was a very small child at the end of the war. And she remembers some time in Paris, but her formative years were all in the United States.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yes, that's beautiful. So I think that's it. So basically, if anybody wants to write their story, need a bit of help, come to Ian. Now, I suppose you're going to charge them $10,000.
Nothing.
No, not even 10,000.
Not even 10,000.
Not even 5,000. Okay, I don't know. Sorry.
It really, of course, it
It's a
depends on
massive work to do. I mean, I don't know how you can even give a figure.
It's impossible.
It must
to give
be
a figure.
very difficult.
It's not a figure beforehand.
It
No.
can't be.
No.
No, it's time based, and I try to be reasonable with my hourly rate. I try to be and I try to be very fair with the time that I spend, to make sure they get full value.
Well,
but
you've never had a complaint.
I've never had a complaint.
You've never had a complaint.
But it is.
How
But it
happy.
is. It is a costly exercise.
It's a
Yes.
Look, it's not to put the photos where their photos are dropped into the story. They're part of it. It's not a photo history.
No.
So it takes
That's right. Now, some of them are photo histories. You're quite right. I
Yes.
know someone who does that.
Yeah.
Photo histories.
But not ours.
But this
Yeah.
is not.
No, I much prefer to set
So
the
same
story.
with me. Yeah. It's a wonderful job. And really, there's a job for people out there, isn't there, to do
Yes.
this work.
Yes.
So if they want, as a consultant of this, you can charge them per hour, and then they can go off and do it themselves.
That's right. I'm happy to help them with
Yeah.
their own writing and
Yeah.
help. For example, if they want to write it and they want some editing or they want some suggestions shaping it, I'm happy to
Well,
do
I'm
that.
really pleased I met you because I really do have to do it. I've been doing this, so this is it. Of course, I am going to be, because of the Baum interviews, I will be given a very good discount, I realise.
Of course.
The only reason I got you here, you too, didn't you? Did you think there was any other reason? Anyway, so we're now going to finish with Kathy's choice of music, which is...
the Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto No. 1.
We wish for peace and good health for everyone, and it's not just for the Jewish world.
It's for
We're
everyone.
all interdependent.
Everyone,
It's for everyone.
absolutely. I think that's really, really important. And people do say, don't they, the rabbis, this is not just our New Year. It's the New Year of the whole world.
That's
Not
right.
many people realise it, do they?
That's it.
Thank you so much. It was such a great honour to have you both. Okay, everybody, that's it for the Baum interviews this week on J-Air 87.8 FM, j-air.com.au, repeated on Sunday at 5 p.m. Podcasts, easy. Just go Hanna, Hanna, Baum radio, and the podcasts are all there. Have a wonderful weekend, the Shabbat, and a Yom Kippur. Meaningful, inspirational, and please God, soon some of our restrictions will be removed, as we are doing pretty well here in Melbourne. Let's all give each of us a slap on the back. We've done really, really well, and Shana Tova, everybody, again, and we'll see you next week. I'm hoping for an exclusive with the three sisters, with Dassi Ehrlich, Ellie Sapper, and Michelle Orbach. Their campaign to get Malka Leifer back, and all the people who have helped her, including the politicians here, David Southwick, Josh Burns, the community, parts, I'm sure, of the Adas community themselves, the rabbi, and all our community here in Melbourne, the Orthodox community, the traditional community, the Reform community, every single Jewish person here in Melbourne and all their friends all over, wishing and hoping and praying that Malka Leifer will soon be here and we will be there outside the court showing our strength, our unity of our beloved Melbourne Jewish community. Shabbat Shalom.
J-Air 87.8 FM.
As a Bombers supporter, I